Friends, welcome to the channel JIV and CIV Made Simple. So in this session we are going to discuss our RBWM June 2024 memory based question. So friends, RBWM, let's see, this topic is very important. This session is very important because you will be able to see from which topic IIBF is more inclined to ask question, and you can prepare, you can channelize your preparation accordingly, so that you can get the maximum benefit. You will be able to know which topic they are preferring most. So let's begin with the first question that we have. First question is regarding which of the following statement correctly summarize the guidelines for bank in granting access to the content of safe deposit locker or returning the safe custody. So this is a very good question. Let me explain. So question is, which of the following statement correctly summarize the guidelines for bank in granting access to the content of safe deposit locker or returning safe custody article to the nominee or survivor upon the death of a locker hirer. So suppose the locker hirer died, okay, and now you have been asked which statement correctly summarize the guideline for bank. What is the guideline for what banks should do in such case, right? In granting access to the content of safe deposit locker or returning safe custody article to the nominee or survivor. So let's see the first option. The first option says that if the sole lock hirer nominate a person, the bank will grant access to the locker and liberty to remove the content to the nominee in the event of hirer's death. So in simple word, what this means is that if there is only one person who own the locker, so suppose there is a one person, right, he own the locker, and they have nominated someone, let's say a family member, that nominee gets the right to access the locker and take out whatever is inside after the locker hirer dies. The bank does not need anything else. The nomination is enough to transfer the access, right? Okay, now let's see, we will see whether it is correct or not later on. First see the option number B. Option number B says if the locker was hired jointly with instruction for joint signature, the bank will grant access to the locker and liberty to remove the content jointly to the survivor and the nominee in event of any hirer's death. So now this one is for situation where two or more people hire a locker together, and the bank has instruction that all of them needs to sign to access the locker. One of those hirer dies, the bank will allow the remaining person or the people who are alive as well as the nominee to open the locker together and take out the content. It is a group effort in this case. Okay, now let's see the option number C. What does option number C says? That if the locker was hired jointly with a survivorship clause, the bank will follow the instructions such as either a survivor, anyone or survivor, former or survivor in the event of one or more locker hirer death. So this option talks about something called survivorship clause. You can see written survivorship clause. So it is a fancy term that basically means the remaining person or people can access the locker without needing everyone else's permission. Right, when I say survivorship clause, what does it mean? It basically means the remaining people. It means the remaining people, right? Either you call it remaining people or people can access the locker without needing everyone else's permission. So if two people rent a locker and one dies, the surviving person can open the locker without any hassle, right? The bank follow rule what is called either a survivor rule, which simplifies thing. And option D say all of the above. So now finally the correct answer is option number D, because all of these statements are correct. Whether there is a nominee, joint hirer with joint signature or a survivorship clause, the bank has clear guideline for each situation to allow access to the locker or return article to the appropriate people. So that's how bank handles safe deposit locker when a locker hirer passes away. If you have got a locker, it is important to have the right nomination or instruction in place so that everything goes smoothly for your loved one. So see, this is how this type of question is asked in the examination, and we have a complete set of 100 question from the last June 2024 examination, which I will provide you some sample question in this particular session, and the rest PDF or rest videos explanation can be accessed from our paid course. For more detail on regarding the paid course, you can WhatsApp me on this particular number. Now let's come to the second question we have. So second question is regarding which of the following statement correctly describe the guideline for premature termination. Right, I to understand. The question is regarding the premature termination, right, of the term deposit account upon the death of depositor as per bank policy. So let's see the option. So when I say premature termination, it means what? Suppose the FD was for 5 years and now we are just terminating the FD in the 4 year. That is called premature termination. And why it happening? Because the depositor died. Right. Now let's see the first option. Bank do not allow premature termination of term deposit under any circumstance, even in the event of depositor death. So option A suggests that no matter what, bank won't allow you to break or prematurely close a term deposit, even if the person who has opened the account has passed away. But this is not correct. Bank do allow termination of deposit in certain case where the account holder dies. So we can rule out this option. So this option is incorrect. Option B says bank allow premature termination of term deposit upon the death of the depositor, provided that a clause to this effect is included in the account opening form, and that premature withdrawal would not attract any penalty charge. So this option is spot on. Bank do allow premature closure of term deposit when the account holder passes away. I have already told you that yes, bank allow premature termination, right? So but here is the key part. There need to be a specific clause included in the account opening form. So whenever account opening form, in the account opening form there will be a clause, right, which specifically mentions it. Also, when the termination happen under this circumstance, no penalty charge will be applied. So this is the correct answer. Now let's see the next question that we have. Next question is regarding okay, some more option also. Let's see option number C. Option number C says premature termination of the term deposit upon the death of the depositor is allowed, but it always incur a penalty charge. See, it sounds similar to option number B, but there is a major difference that you always have to pay a penalty charge for terminating the term deposit early. However, as we discussed in option B, bank won't charge a penalty in case where depositor has passed away. Right. So bank won't charge any penalty. No penalty is charged. Right. So this one is incorrect. And let's see the option number D. So option number D says that a court order is needed. See, you can see bank required a court order for premature termination of term deposit upon the death of the depositor, regardless of any clause in the account opening form. This option is saying that a court order is needed to terminate the term deposit early if the depositor passes away. But that's not how it works. As long as there is a clause in the account form, the bank does not need any court order to close the deposit prematurely. So this is also incorrect option. So what is the correct answer? The correct answer is option number B. Right. So remember, bank allow premature termination of term deposit when the depositor passes away, but only if there is a specific clause mentioned in the account opening form. And the best part, no penalty charge will applied in this situation. So that's the guideline for term deposit where the depositor passes away. So it's a great reminder to check the clauses in your deposit form to make sure your loved one have it easy. Right. See, this is how we explain each and every question. I explain each and every option so that you have conceptual clarity, and if such question repeats in the next examination, you can answer it easily and comfortably. Now let's see the next question. The next question is regarding which of the following statement accurately describe the concept of credit score and the RBI directive regarding CIR. What is CIR? Credit Information Report. Right. So now we are break down an MCQs on credit score. Let's see the option. Option A say a credit score is a detailed report of the customer financial history provided by the bank ranging from 300 to 900 that measures the consumer total wealth. So option A is a bit misleading. While a credit score does range from, yes, it ranges from 300 to 900, but it is not a detailed report of someone's financial history. It says financial history. This is wrong. Right. And it certainly does not measure their total wealth. It does not measure consumer total wealth. So instead, it is just a snapshot of how reliable someone is in paying back loan or credit. Your wealth does not directly influence your credit score. It is more about your credit behavior, like paying bill on time. Option B says a credit score takes a snapshot of the customer credit report, turning the information into 3-digit number representing the amount of risk he brings to a particular transaction. RBI has directed, let's go move to the next slide, bank to ensure that CIR in respect of the borrower is updated. See, this option is correct. A credit score is just like a quick summary or a snapshot of your credit report. It boils down all the information from your credit history into a 3-digit number, and this, the higher the score, simply try to understand. When a score is higher, right, when credit score is higher, so it means what? The risk is lower. The risk is lower and vice versa. Also, the RBI has directed bank to keep this CIR updated so that they have the most recent data while assessing a borrower. So option number B is the correct one. Now let's see the option number C, that a credit score is a static measure that remain unchanged regardless of the changes in the customer financial behavior and history. This option is definitely wrong. A credit score is not static. See, the keyword written here is static. This is not static. A credit score is not static. It changes based on your financial behavior, right? So if you start paying your bill on time or clear your loan, you can score, your score can go up. If you miss payment or take on too much debt, your score can drop. So it is a consistent, it's constantly being updated based on your credit activity. And option D says the RBI has mandated that bank only consider credit score above 700 for loan approval to ensure borrower's reliability. This is also incorrect. RBI has not mandated a specific credit score for loan appraisal. While many banks do prefer a score above 100 for approving loan because it shows a low risk, but there is no hard rule from RBI that says bank can only give loan to people with a score about 700. So this is wrong. So option number B is the correct one, right? Hopefully the concept is clear now, that a credit score summarizes your credit worthiness in simple 3-digit number, and RBI had made sure that the bank regularly update this report to provide accurate information. Now let's come to the next question. Friend, if you are looking for any kind of a study material for RBWM in the form of PDF, videos, mock tests, capsule content, you can WhatsApp in this particular number. I will provide you detail. We have a dedicated app called JIV and CIV Made Simple, which contain all the study material related to all the JIV subjects. So you can WhatsApp me on this particular number to get more insight into the thing. Now let's see the next question. Which of the following statement correctly identify the meaning of UTR and the number of digits it contains for NEFT and RTGS transaction? So the option A says that UTR for RTGS, UTR stand for unique transfer reference and contains 16 digit in NEFT and 22 digit in RTGS. So yes, it has 16 digit in NEFT and 22 digit RPS, but the term UTR does not stand for unique transfer reference. This is wrong. Option B says universal transaction reference and contain 12 digit in NEFT and 18 digit in RPS. So this is also wrong. It gives us a different term, that is universal transaction reference, and a different digital count, that is 12 digit. So 12 digit for NEFT and 18 digit for RTGS, what it says, this is actually incorrect because the correct term is not universal transaction reference. Now let's move on to the question number C. Question number C says that UTR stands for unique transaction reference and contains 16 digit in NEFT and 22 digit in RTGS. So it's like tracking a number for your NEFT and RTGS transaction. This one is the correct one. Yes, it is unique transaction reference. Please remember this full form, unique transaction reference, and it helps the bank identify your specific transaction. In the NEFT it has 16 digit and for RTGS it has 22 digit. Option D says unified transaction record. This is also incorrect because the correct term is unique transaction reference, not unified. So option C is the correct one in this particular question. Quite simple one, and you are familiar with all these things. Now let's see the next question. Which of the following statement correctly describe the concept of augmented product? Very good question. You have heard about this augmented product. So what is augmented product basically? So let's see the option. First option say augmented product is an enhancement suggested by the customer to improve the product value. Option A says that the augmented product refers to the improvement, right? Simply you can say it refers to the improvement suggested by whom? Suggested by customer, right? It says the same. While customer feedback is important, that's not what define an augmented product. Augmented product involve voluntary enhancement. Try to understand, the keyword is voluntary enhancement, right? Now offered by the company, not those suggested by the company customer. So this is wrong option. What does option B say? Option B says the augmented product involve mandatory improvement required by regulatory body to increase the product. So option B says that augmented product involve changes required by the regulatory body. Again, this is not correct, because if the regulatory body require changes, there are compliance related adjustment. So if the regulatory body require any changes, so there are compliance related adjustment, right? We can say they are compliance adjustment, right? Augmented product are more about adding extra feature that go beyond just compliance to make the product more attractive to the customer. Let's see the option number C. Let's see what option number C says. Option number C says that the augmented product involve voluntary improvement by the bank marketer to enhance the value of the product, such as offering check collection at the customer doorstep and allowing account operation from any branch. This is the correct answer. Augmented product refers to the extra feature or services that bank voluntarily add to improve the overall customer experience. So some feature is extra which is added by the bank, right, to improve their overall customer experience. This could be things like doorstep check collection and letting your account operate from any branch. The idea here is that bank is giving more than the basic product. And what does option D say? Option D says that introduces the concept of augmented product, saying that yeah, feedback is important. This is not what defines augmented product. Instead, augmented product is about adding valuable feature, right? So option number D is also incorrect. What is the correct one? The correct one is option number C. Now let's come to the next question. Which of the following statement correctly describe the income from other sources as per the Income Tax Act? So see, first question is first option is income from other sources included only the income from business and profession that is not covered under the other head. So option is suggests that the income from other source. So this is the key point, right, which we are talking about. Income from other source as per the income tax. So income from other source include only income from business and profession that does not fit elsewhere. This is incorrect, right? It is saying that income from business and profession, that this it is wrong. Actually, income from business and profession actually falls under a separate category. So this income from business and profession falls under a separate, there is a separate category, right, in the income tax. And income from other sources, which is under Income Tax Act, it refers to the income that does not belong to the business, that not belong to the usual category like salary or business, right? So that was option number B. Let's move on to the option number C. That is income from other source include all type of income like salary and house property income, right? So option B says that all type of salary and house property. So it includes all type of income like salary and house property income, but that not accurate. Income from salary and house property are classified under a specific head in the Income Tax Act. Income from other sources is actually reserved for things that do not fit into this common category. So this option is wrong. Now let's see the next question, next option that says that income from other source include interest on bank deposit and security, dividend, royalty income, winning from lotteries and races, and gift received. So what do you think? This is the correct answer. Income from other source refers to the type of income like interest on bank deposit, dividend. You can see all these things are included in income from other income. Income from other sources, interest on bank deposit and security, dividend, royalty income, winning from lottery and races, and gift received. Now let's see the option number D. Income from other sources is exempted from taxation under section 56. So this is definitely incorrect. Section 56 actually deals with taxing such information, such income, not exempting it. So the correct answer is option number C. Remember, income from other sources include things like internet, dividend, lottery, writing, and certain types of gifts. Now let's see the next question we have. The question is, what action does a secured creditor takes after a borrower account is classified as NPA according to the act? You know NPA is non-performing asset. First option say the secured creditor is immediately required to initiate legal proceeding against the defaulting borrower. So this option says that the creditor need to start legal proceeding immediately after the account become an NPA, but that is not true because the law does not require immediate legal action. So this word immediate legal action, this is wrong, right? There is actually a structured process that the creditor must follow before the things go real, and the option is incorrect. So immediate legal action, this is wrong. And now option B says secured creditor can issue a demand notice under section 13 subsection 2 to the defaulting borrower, calling them to discharge the dues in full within 90 days. This is the correct answer. When an account is classified as NPA, the secured creditor can issue a demand notice under section 13 subsection 2 to the promise to the SARFAESI. This notice gives the borrower 60 days chance to repeat the dues given in the. So option number B is the correct answer. Option C says that the secured creditor must waive off all outstanding dues to the defaulting borrower. So this is also incorrect. Waiving of the dues is not something that creditor do in NPA situation. And option D says secured creditor must wait for borrower to voluntarily settle the outstanding due without any intervention. So this says that the creditor should wait for borrower to pay back the dues without any action. That is not the case. Often once an account become NPA, the creditor is allowed to take a step to recover the money, and waiting indefinitely is not a part of the process. So that's why the correct answer is option number B. Now let's move on to the next question, which is regarding Abraham Maslow law. So the question is here is a very good question. Like according to the Abraham Maslow hierarchy of need, which of the following is needed? Now tell me, according to the Abraham Maslow law, which of the following statement accurately reflect the concept? First option say Maslow hierarchy law consists of 6 motivational needs. It is correct or not? This is incorrect. It consists of 5 levels, not 6. And the needs are arranged in a pyramid, not a circle. You can see here written that it consists of 6 motivational. This is wrong. There are 5 motivational needs, and it's not a circle. This is in pyramid pattern. So this is wrong. Option B says hierarchy of need include 5 stages starting from social needs and progress toward the physiological need. So the base of the pyramid is actually physiological need, which includes things like food and water. It does not start with social need. The base of starter is basically physiological need, social need, self-esteem need, and finally at the top self-actualization. Then the Maslow theory suggests that the individual are motivated to achieve certain needs, which are fulfilled in a random order without any hierarchical structure. So option C is that Maslow law suggests that the individual are motivated to achieve certain needs which are fulfilled in random order. This is wrong. And option D says the Maslow hierarchy of need. Let's move to the option number D. It says that the Maslow hierarchy of need comprises 5 motivation need, progressing from physiological need to the base, at the base to the self-actualization need in the pinnacle. So this is the correct answer, right? Maslow hierarchy needs has 5 level, starting from the physiological needs at the bottom, and as these needs are met, first of all, let me show you this Maslow hierarchy law. So this is suppose the pyramid. So at the bottom we have physiological need, right? As these needs are met, people move to the safety need, okay, and after that esteem need. And finally it is self-actualization, right? So each level motivate a person when it is unmet. Option D says Maslow hierarchy of need comprises 5 motivation. I think we have covered this thing. Okay, so what is the correct answer? Correct answer is option number D, right? Now let's see the next question. The next question is regarding the UPI 2.0. So what does the question say? Which of the following statement accurately describe the feature of UPI 2.0? So the question is which of the following statement is correct regarding UPI 2.0? So what are the options? UPI 2.0 does not introduce any new feature beyond the original UPI system. This option is incorrect because UPI 2.0 introduced several new features to improve the original UPI system. So saying that UPI 2.0 did not introduce anything new is wrong. So what does UPI 2.0 does not? So this option is incorrect, right? This option number A is incorrect. Why it is incorrect? Because UPI 2.0 did not introduce anything new is wrong. This is wrong. right? UPI 2.0 is upgrade, and we will see what those new features are in bit. Now, UPI 2.0 introduces enhanced security measures such as OTP based account linking and transaction authorization. So this is the correct answer. It has brought a new feature like OTP based account linking or transaction authentication. These features make transaction more secure by ensuring that the user identity is being protected. Now, UPI 2.0 allow user to make payment only through mobile apps and exclude web-based transaction. This option is also incorrect. UPI 2.0 is flexible. So, question is UPI 2.0 is flexible and allow payment not just through mobile app but also through other channel, including web-based platforms. So, it does not restrict you to just mobile app only. Now, option C says yes, mobile app. This is wrong. What is option D says? That UPI 2.0 limits the transaction benefit and transfer the order. So this was regarding the UPI 2.0. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question is regarding what is the maximum number of member allowed in a self-help group. So self-help group, option A say 10, 20, 25, 30. So option A suggests that the member in the maximum group is 10. So if we talk about 10, so first option says that the maximum number of member in SHG is 10. This is incorrect, right? It is quite small. While SHG can be quite small, the maximum number of member allowed is higher than 10. So option B says 20. This is the correct answer. In India, maximum number of member allowed in SHG is 20. Please remember this point. This size is considered ideal for effective group functioning and management. Option C says 25. So 25 is wrong. 30 is also wrong. Now friends, there is a case study type question which has been asked in the previous examination of RVWM. The question is like Mrs. ABC is engaged in a ready-made garment manufacturing activity, right? The average holding period for the stock and duration of the creditor are given below. If the annual turnover is 70 lakh and the annual operating expense are 60 lakh, the working capital requirement is computed as. So working capital requirement आपको calculate करना है. You have to calculate the working capital requirement. This is a very nice question. Let me explain. Right. See, let's go through each and every option. So it is engaged in the ready-made garment, and what has given, you can see procurement of raw material. You can see the working capital requirement. Procurement of raw material 30 days, conversion process time 15 days, average time of holding of finished good 15 days, average collection period 30 days. Based on this information, you have to calculate the total operating cycle for Messrs. ABC. So this question is asked in the previous examination. So how to calculate it? So first thing first, first option suggests how much it is, 30 days. So it suggests that the total operating cycle is 30 days, but this does not seem the right because the total operating cycle includes several stages and the 30 days is too short to cover. So the option A is incorrect. Option B says and what does it next point? Option B says 60 days. So 60 days for the total operating cycle. While this is closer, it does not include all the stages. Option C says 90 days. You can see 90 days. So let me explain. What is the procurement of raw material time period? 30 days. What is the conversion process time? 15 days. Average time of holding of finished good 15 days. Average collection period is 30 days. So now add all these. So it will be how much? 30 plus 15 plus 15 plus 30. So it will be how much? 90 days. So total operating cycle is 90 days. Quite simple. It is not 120 days. So this is how we calculate the total operating cycle. Understanding this cycle is crucial for managing working safely. Now the next question is which of the following is not a criteria for a validity of a patent. So First case is novelty. You know what is novelty? Novelty means a crucial criteria for a patent. For inventory to be patentable, it must be new, and it meaning it has not been previously disclosed to the public. So option A is necessarily criteria, not the answer we are looking for. Non-obviousness. So what does it mean? Non-obviousness is another important criteria. This means that the invention must not be obvious to someone with ordinary skill in the relevant field. If the invention is obvious, it won't qualify for a patent. So option B is also a valid criteria. Option C say utility. Utility is a requirement for a patent as well. So it is required for patents as well. So this invention must be useful and have some practical application. So utility is a requirement for patent as well. The inventory must be useful and have some practical application. So option C is necessary for patent validity, and option D says commercial success. So commercial success is also correct answer. Commercial success is not a criteria for the validity. See, question is not a criteria. So novelty is there, non-obviousness is there, utility is there, but for commercial success is not a criteria. While an inventory may become commercially successful, this does not affect whether the patent is valid. So validity of a patent is determined based on novelty, non-obviousness, and utility, and not on its market success. So option number D is the correct one, right? So D number option is the correct one. Let's see the next question. According to the criteria for loan eligibility, for how long should a self-help group be in active existence as per its book of account? So now we are focusing on self-help group or SHG and their eligibility for loan. So there are 4 options. Since the date of opening its saving bank account, at least 3 months, at least 6 months, at least 1 year. So this option suggests that first option suggests since the day of opening its saving account. This option says that the SHG eligibility is based on how long it has had its saving bank account. However, this is incorrect. Eligibility is not about the duration since the opening the bank account, but rather the active existence as recorded in the book of account. Option B say at least 3 months. So it suggests that the 3 months is enough for an SHG to be eligible for a loan, but this is also incorrect. While 3 months is a good start, it is not a required duration for loan eligibility. Option C say at least 6 months. Okay, what do you say? 6 months is necessary? See, this is correct answer. For a self-help group to be eligible for loan, it must be in active existence for at least 6 months according to its books of account. This ensures that the group has sufficient history and stability. Additionally, the SHG should follow the Panch Sutra, which include regular meeting. See, what are the Panch Sutra? First thing is regular meeting. The second thing is saving. The second thing is interloaning and timely repayment. At least 1 year is also incorrect. So friends, similarly you can see we have 100 question set, and this set I will add in our PDF course, comprehensive course, and all the RBWM courses. So if you want PDF of this particular course, if you want video explanation of all of the rest question, you can enroll in our program. For more detail you can WhatsApp in this particular number.